The Air Raid Shelter. When I was a child, I lived in Jinan. Jinan is an old city in northern China, known for its springs, its old streets, and its older residential neighborhoods. Outsiders who visit Jinan usually remember the water. But when I was little, the thing I heard adults talk about most was something else. There were a lot of air raid shelters under Jinan. That was not a rumor. Many Chinese cities had places like that underground, especially structures left behind from an earlier era. Adults used to repeat an old national slogan: dig deep tunnels, stockpile grain. It meant that people were supposed to build shelters beneath the ground and store enough food in case war came. Now it sounds like something from a history lesson, but back then, those words had turned into real tunnels, real rooms, wells, iron doors, and passages running under the city. By the time we were growing up, the war everyone had prepared for never came, and many of those shelters were no longer used. Some were sealed off for good. Others were turned into storage spaces. A few entrances were simply left where they were, beside schools, roads, factories, or old residential compounds, locked most of the time and ignored by everyone. But just because no one looked at them did not mean there was nothing inside. I only understood that later. As a child, I knew of 2 air raid shelters. One was under Jinan No. 14 Middle School. No. 14 Middle School was just an ordinary local school. The name may sound strange if you are not from China, but many Chinese schools are named that way. No. 1 Middle School, No. 2 Middle School, No. 14 Middle School. To outsiders, it sounds like a number. To people who live there, it is a place everyone knows. When I was in primary school, I had already heard that there was an air raid shelter under No. 14 Middle School. Later, I heard a story about it. 4 fifth-grade boys somehow found out that one entrance to the shelter was inside the school's boiler room, so they sneaked into the school grounds. A boiler room is another thing that may not mean much to younger people now. In those days, many schools and work units had one. It was where the heating and hot water equipment was kept, full of pipes, tucked away in a corner. Students normally had no reason to go there. It was not watched the way classrooms were. Those boys lifted a board in the boiler room and climbed down. Then they got lost. When their parents realized the children had not come home, they called the police. Later, after the police worked out that the boys might have gone into the shelter, a PE teacher from the school went down with a map. He searched for about an hour before finding them beside an underground well. That story spread around the neighborhood for a while. Later, when I was in middle school, I went to No. 14 myself, and the school once took us down there for a visit. That was in the daytime. The teachers had turned on the lights before we went in, so nothing happened. But I remember how big it was. There were explosion-proof lights fixed to the ceiling every few meters. Along the sides were small brick rooms, wells, and long passages. When someone spoke, the sound came back empty and far away. It did not feel like an ordinary basement. It felt more like an abandoned city underground. But that is not the shelter I really want to talk about. The one I still remember was another one. That shelter was near the crossing of Xiaoweiwu Road and Chalu Street, not far from my home and not far from school. The entrance did not look like anything special. Beside the road there was a low concrete slab, about 3 meters long and a little over a meter wide. An iron door lay flat on top of it, and most of the time there was a large lock on the door. In daylight, the place looked completely normal. In the morning, someone sold tianmo beside it. Tianmo is a local Jinan breakfast. Despite the name, it is not sweet. It is a hot, savory porridge made with millet flour, peanuts, glass noodles, tofu skin, and other things. If you drank a bowl in the morning, your stomach stayed warm for a long time. People from other places sometimes hear the name and think it is a dessert, but for locals it was just ordinary breakfast. In the afternoon, old men would bring their caged birds outside. That was a common habit among older men in places like Jinan and Beijing. They kept birds in small cages, carried them out during the day, and hung the cages on trees or beside a wall while they sat underneath, smoking, talking, and watching people pass. The birds sang in their cages, the old men chatted by the road, and the whole place felt very lived in. Nothing about it looked like the kind of place where something could happen. So you have to understand, the entrance to that air raid shelter was not out in some abandoned field. It was at the corner of an ordinary residential neighborhood. People ate breakfast there in the morning. Old men sat there with their birds in the afternoon. Children walked past with school bags on their backs. No one paid any special attention to the iron door. But under that iron door, there was an air raid shelter. Of course, when we were children, we had heard adults mention it. They said there was a shelter under there. They also told us not to go near it. It was dark down there, they said, and deep. If you went in and could not find your way out, no one would be able to save you. But children do not hear warnings the way adults intend them. To adults, it was a warning. To us, it sounded as if there had to be something down there. One afternoon after school, we walked past the concrete slab and noticed that the large lock on the iron door was gone. Maybe someone had pried it off and sold it as scrap metal. That kind of thing was not rare then. Iron locks, manhole covers, old pipes. If something could be sold for scrap, someone might steal it. We gathered around the iron door for a long time. No one said it clearly, but all of us knew we would come back that night. After dinner, 7 or 8 of us, all primary school kids, secretly returned to that street corner. None of us told our families. It was around 8 o'clock. The man who sold tianmo was gone. The old men with their bird cages were gone. In the daytime, the concrete slab had looked so ordinary that no one cared about it. At night, it seemed to have become something else. Together, we lifted the iron door. It was heavy. When it came up, the sound was dull and low. Below it was a staircase. Not a pit, not a slope. A real staircase, step after step, leading down. The boys who had been making noise about going in suddenly stopped talking. One of us was called Tao. He was the brave one, or at least he always acted as if he was. He said he would go first, and that the rest of us should follow. Then he took out a flashlight and a candle. The candle was mainly to test whether there was enough oxygen inside. Back then, adults told us that old shelters, old cellars, and old wells might not have enough air after being closed for a long time. Before going in, you lit a candle. If the flame died right away, you were not supposed to go any farther. Tao held the flashlight in his left hand and the candle in his right, and went down first. I was second. The stairs went down a dozen steps, turned, then went down another dozen steps. It felt like walking down the stairwell of a building, except above us, there was no building. There was only the road and the neighborhood. We went down what felt like 3 floors before we reached the bottom. At the bottom was a passage running north and south. There was water in the passage. Not shallow water, it came up to our knees. Luckily it was summer, otherwise that water alone would have been enough to make us turn back. We stood in it, shining the flashlight ahead. The water reflected the light. The walls were wet. The air smelled stale and heavy. Everyone stopped. No one wanted to go forward. I was scared too, but I did not want the others to see that, so I pulled Tao and said the 2 of us would take a look ahead while the rest waited there. We only had 2 flashlights that night. One stayed with them. One came with Tao and me. We stepped through the water and headed south. After a while, I noticed many small openings built of red brick along both sides of the passage. Some looked like rooms. Some looked like side tunnels. Every one of them was black inside. Not the kind of black you get when the lights are off in a room at night. This was the kind of black where the flashlight seemed to reach only the outer edge, and everything beyond it was swallowed. The farther we went, the less I wanted to continue. Tao had stopped talking too. After a short distance, we both stopped. Neither of us said we were afraid, but both of us turned around. When we looked back, the others were gone. The place where they had been standing was empty. The water was still there, the walls were still there, the passage was still there, but the people were gone. My first thought was that they had run away. Tao and I cursed them as we walked back, saying they had no loyalty, that they had promised to wait and then gone up without us. As we were walking, Tao suddenly stopped beside one of the openings. He asked if we should look inside. I did not want to, but that is how children are. The more frightened you are, the more you try to act as if you are not. We moved closer and realized it was not an opening. It was an iron door. The door was set into the brick wall. It would not move. There was no glass in it either. I kicked it. The door gave a heavy bang. The echo rolled outward, first close, then farther away, then fading into some deeper space beyond the door. It did not feel like the space behind an ordinary door. It felt as if a large, empty area lay behind it. Neither of us wanted to stay there any longer. We turned and ran back. When we reached the place where the staircase should have been, the stairs were gone. I still remember this clearly. When we came down, there had been a platform there, and the stairs rose from that platform. If we climbed them, we would return to the iron door beside the road. Now there was no platform, no stairs, only a wall. At first we thought we had gone the wrong way, but the passage was straight. We had not turned into a side tunnel. We had not gone around a corner. The stairs should have been right there. That was when we heard singing, very faint. At first it sounded like water. Then I realized it was a song. It was not one person singing. It sounded like 5 or 6 people singing together from very far away, their voices low, the notes dragged out for a long time. I could not make out the words. Maybe there were no words. I only remember that the tune was slow, soft, and sad. I cannot explain it, but the moment I heard it, something in me went cold. We looked west. That end was completely dark. Tao shone the flashlight that way. I saw something moving over there. I could not tell what it was. I only remember that it was not still. It looked as if it was hanging, or floating, or as if someone was standing there, swaying very slowly. Neither of us said anything. We turned and ran east. As we ran, Tao slipped and fell into the water. He choked on several mouthfuls. The flashlight went under too. It flickered once and went out. The candle would not light anymore. At that moment, the place went completely dark. So dark that even standing beside each other, we could not see each other's faces. All I could hear was the water around my legs and Tao breathing beside me. After a while, Tao felt along the wall and found a platform. He said there were stairs. We climbed them. Again, it felt like 3 floors, but when we reached the top, we were not back at the original street corner. We were inside a small room. The door was locked. There was a window. Outside the window was a large courtyard. We climbed out through the window, ran across the courtyard, found our way back to the street, and circled around to the place where we had first gone down. The others were all standing up there. The moment I saw them, I started yelling. I asked why they had abandoned us underground, but they said they had never run away. They said that after Tao and I walked south, they had stayed where they were and called for us to come back. At first, they could still hear the sound of us stepping through the water. Then that sound moved farther and farther away. Then the 2 of us disappeared. I said that was impossible. In a place that empty, how could they have called us and we not heard them? One boy got angry and swore he was telling the truth. "If I'm lying, may I be cursed," he said. After he said that, a cold sweat broke out over my body. because Tao and I really had not heard anything down there. No one calling us, no footsteps, only water, and that singing. While we were arguing at the entrance, a boy from our compound rode past on his bicycle. His name was Li Chen. When I say compound, I do not just mean a yard. In China, especially back then, many people lived in old residential compounds, several apartment blocks or dormitory buildings clustered together, with many families inside, a gatehouse near the entrance, and children who all knew one another. Adults knew whose child belonged to which family. Li Chen was a little older than us. He had just started middle school. That night, he was probably coming home from evening self-study. Evening self-study was normal for Chinese students at that time. After dinner, students often went back to school and sat in the classroom to study, sometimes with a teacher watching over them. They would go home later at night, often by bicycle. So it was not strange for him to ride past us at that hour. He saw us gathered there and stopped to ask what we were doing. We told him what had happened. He did not believe us. He borrowed a flashlight and said he would go down himself. We followed him only to the bottom of the stairs. None of us dared to step into the water again. He went in alone. I warned him that there was water below. He sounded impatient. I know. Then he said, "The water is pretty deep." Those were the last normal words I heard him say. He walked south. We stood by the stairway and shouted for him to come back. He acted as if he could not hear us. After a few steps, his whole body disappeared into the darkness. All we could hear was the sound of his feet in the water. Splash, splash, splash. The sound moved farther away. Someone beside me whispered, "See, he can't hear us either." After a while, Li Chen screamed. It was not an ordinary shout. It was the kind of scream that comes out of a person when fear tears it out of the throat before he can stop it. Then we heard him running back through the water. The splashing became chaotic. He was running and crying at the same time, shouting, "Where are you? Where are you? The stairs are gone!" We could hear him, but we could not see him. Sometimes his voice seemed close. Sometimes it sounded far away. It felt very strange, as if he was not in the same passage as us at all, but running behind an invisible wall. We were terrified. Some of the boys ran straight back up. Then I suddenly remembered that Tao and I had not escaped by the original stairs. We had gone east and found another exit. So I shouted into the darkness, "Go east! Go east!" I do not know if he heard me. We did not dare wait. We rushed out of the shelter. No one cared about Li Chen's bicycle. We ran straight back to the compound to find his father. At that time, many families still did not have telephones at home. Old residential compounds usually had a gatehouse at the entrance. The gatehouse was where the guard stayed, received letters, watched the gate, and passed messages. Some gatehouses had a public phone. If something urgent happened, people went there to call. Li Chen's father used the public phone in the gatehouse to call the police. When the police arrived, they asked us what had happened. Then they had us take them to the small room where Tao and I had come out. The police went down through that entrance. It did not take long before they found him. They said Li Chen was sitting in the water, crying. His flashlight was still on. Behind him was the platform. On the platform were the stairs. In other words, he had been sitting very close to the way out. The stairs had been there the whole time, but just now, he could not see them. After that night, Li Chen changed. When he went home, he did not talk much for a long time. Not just for a day or two. Not because he was embarrassed. It was as if something had frightened part of him loose. Later, he was sick for several months. After that, his family moved away. When I was in my first year of middle school, I saw him again. By then, we were all a little older. Some things that had terrified us as children could be brought up and laughed about. But when I mentioned the air raid shelter, Li Chen did not laugh. He told me what had happened to him down there. He said that when he walked south, he heard a woman laughing softly ahead of him. The laughter was not loud, but it was right in front of him. He got scared and turned back. Then he ran into a door. His whole body hit it. Through the crack in the door, he saw what looked like a pair of eyes watching him from inside. After that, he could not find the stairs. He could not hear us calling him. East was darkness. West was darkness. Then he heard many people singing softly. The voices were low, slow, the same kind of singing Tao and I had heard. He was too frightened to keep walking, so he sat down in the water and cried. As he cried, he heard a sound behind him, a creak, as if the door he had just run into was opening. He said he was almost about to faint. That was when the police arrived. Only when the police came did he suddenly see that the platform was behind him, and the stairs were on top of it. I asked him if he still remembered the song. I had long forgotten the melody myself. Even that day in the shelter, the singing had been very faint, mixed with the sound of water, as if it had come from far away or from behind a wall. What stayed with me was only the feeling of it. Li Chen said he still dreamed about that shelter. In his dreams, there was always someone singing that song. Then he hummed a few lines. The moment I heard it, my whole body stiffened. It was not an ordinary song. It sounded like a funeral lament from the villages around Jinan. In some rural places, when an old person died, the family held funeral rites and sent the body out for burial. During the procession, people did not only cry. Sometimes someone would sing in a long, slow voice, as if crying for the living and opening the road for the dead. It was not opera. It was not a lively folk song sung for pleasure. It was a sound for sending the dead away. And that was the kind of sound we had heard under the city, inside that flooded air raid shelter, with water up to our knees. Many voices, very soft, very low, as if coming from behind a door. I do not know what was behind that iron door. I do not know why the stairs disappeared. I do not know why people standing so close could sometimes neither hear nor see one another. The entrance to that air raid shelter is long gone now. Later, a new building was put up over that place. Every day, people walk above it without knowing that there used to be an iron door there, a passage filled with water up to the knees, and another door none of us ever opened. Maybe the shelter was filled in. Maybe only the entrance was sealed. Whenever I pass that place, I still look down at the ground without thinking. I remember the sound of water that night. I remember the passage so black you could not see the end of it. I remember Li Chen sitting in the water crying, with the stairs right behind him, unable to see them. And I remember the song sung at funerals, the song for sending the dead away.